glad that I have this opportunity to speak on one of my favorite topics, which I now, start calling it as my signature program.
Program.
Because, mostly when people reach out to me, the first, topic that they put on the table is networking. And I'm so very glad to have that opportunity because people get it so wrong. So I really want to bust some myths and tell them that it's not difficult. It's not something that you have to really carve out time for. It comes very naturally and it becomes part of your life if you understand what it is all about. So that's what we're going to be talking about quickly today. And let me just share my screen. And I had my slides here. Is it visible?
Not yet, it's loading.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Right. Okay, let me go into the slideshow. All right. So while it is titled Effective Networking and its relevance in today's world, I think it was always relevant. I don't know whether it was called differently earlier. It's called networking today. It might be called something else, in the future. But it's something that all of us need to be really, really cognizant of, understand it extremely well. So let me start by introducing some of the networks that I'm part of. To tell you that while Shweta stressed upon the fact that she's been following me, and I've done so many sessions, and my hand is there in multiple things. Just thought that I'll tell you that the session that we are doing today, and you're sitting through, is a lot of my experience. Okay, it's not some researched gyan that I've got from Google, but this is how I developed my networks and everything else that I'm going to be speaking about. So yeah, quickly, some of the networks that I'm part of. One is of course Jobs for Her. Some of you might have known of me or seen me, met me at some previous events or on LinkedIn or heard me somewhere else or on some WhatsApp groups. So those are all networks, right? And Jobs for Her obviously has become an integral part of my life. I started there as a mentor, and then I have played multiple roles going on to, heading the Jobs for Her Foundation also. Now, the only reason I put this creator on this side is to also emphasize on the fact that networks are not only for you to kind of build relationships, they also eventually lead to plenty of opportunities. Jobs for obviously has led to many opportunities for me. I'm part of multiple lean-in networks. Now, I don't hold any position of significance in a lean-in circle, but I'm one of the many participants, like some of you might be. But despite that, I got invited to speak about, definitely networking and a few other topics at some of their events. I'm also part of this wonderful platform called as Aspire for Her. Don't know if some of you have seen it. And it was started in March 2020. And at that point in time, Madhura Dasgupta Sinha, who's the founder, was looking out for mentors. So I obviously joined them as a mentor. So rightly said, Shweta, that I'm part of so many mentoring platforms because I do believe that one must share their experiences. And if that is going to help somebody else fast track their life and career or overcome a challenge, then why should they go through the same path that we have taken to come through the hurdles, but get over it much quickly. So here is a platform where there are plenty of mentors, 100 plus mentors, and the only reason I put that screenshot, which is a glimpse of some of the mentors, is to tell you what kinds of people are available on that platform as mentors. And those are the people that I network with. Because you are a mentor, you become part of a WhatsApp group, and there's enough and more conversation and plenty of opportunities, that come through because of that. And lastly, this is an organization that I volunteer at called HopeWorks Foundation. And while I may not necessarily call this as a network, but even when you go and volunteer somewhere, obviously you become a part of a network, and these are some of the people that have also now become part of my network. And let's understand that in the right way today. So networking is nothing but the relationships that you develop, right? It's a social capital. Just like you have other kind of forms of capital, there's financial capital and others. There's a term called as social capital, which is nothing but the relationships that you build. And it is said people who are well networked are 3 times more influential than people who are not. I'm sure all of you as managers know that organizations run best when there is trust between team members. There's trust between, 2 teams. between all the functions in an organization. You may have any number of processes and policies in place, and you should follow them. I'm not denying that. But the relationship between two people automatically makes things much more easier, more productive, sometimes more transformative and creative. And I think at the end of the day, if you really were to decipher and dissect the balance sheet or the kind of business outcomes that an organization has had in the year, a lot can be attributed to the relationships that the teams had, because of which they could get to those kinds of beautiful business outcomes. Hence, it is extremely important that we focus on social capital. I also want to touch base upon this word which is called as influence. Influence is nothing but power, right? So it is the definition of influence is the power to make other people agree with your opinions, to get them to do things for you willingly and ethically. And that's the most important part here. I have boldened it, right? Willingly and ethically. Now, there are 7 bases of power, as you can see on the screen. One obviously comes because of the authority that you hold. So you are in a position which gives you the power to reward, power to punish, and hence you could, really call the shots and do a lot of things and get things done. But many a times you do not have the positional power. And even if you had positional power, I would really advocate that you use the other, influencing powers which are, put out in the chart. And that this itself is a topic, and we're not going to talk about it, but I just wanted to mention that power of relationships is one of the big ones here, while there are others, which is power of charisma, power of information, power of expertise. And to prove, the point of the power of relationships, let me narrate a story from one of the organizations that I was working at. And companies have these, I almost call it as hobbies, to do restructures. So every 2 years, there will be a restructure. And people who've stayed on with the organization for 10 years will know that, 5 years ago, we had the same structure, and now, it's kind of come one full circle, and we are having the same structure again. So we were going through a reorg in the organization that I was working in, the team that we were working in. And usually, the process is simple. You will get to know the new structure. You'll probably be plotted into a new role, and you will get to know about it. Maybe you'll have a conversation with HR or something like that. For the first time in the Bangalore, setup, they decided to do this reorg as a spill and fill. So I don't know how many of you understand what is a spill and fill. Whatever new roles are created in the team, they're all spilled out, which means that if there are 10 people who are working the team earlier, they all suddenly have no roles. And the new structure is put out there, and all of us have to apply for it. And you have to probably give, a list of preferences, because it's not that I apply for one, I get, right? So what is your first, second, and third preference? All of us had to do that. And this probably works differently in different organizations, but in that organization at that point in time, this was the timeline. So you get 3 days to show your preference for the roles. And after the 3 days, the committee will decide who gets what. Now, if you do not like any of the roles and do not apply for any, or do not show preference for any of the roles, after 3 days, you will be out of the job. That is how it was. If you apply and then you have another 3 days the committee takes, and on the 6th day, if you did not get a role, then you're again, exiting the organization. Or if you get a role and you do not like it, you do not accept it, again, you have to leave the organization. Not a great, way to do it, but yeah, this is what it was. So you might say, what's the big deal? Go apply, and then let's see, right? The caveat, the problem here was that all the roles which came up in the new structure were at a grade lower than what I was at. Because I was heading this particular team, and everyone else was junior to me. And then the new structure, they had put out all the roles at a grade lower than me. So it might work for everyone else, but one doesn't want to really look at a role which is a grade lower, right? So what do? So I asked around, and the advice that I got was buy time, which was 3 days, right? Because if I didn't do anything in 3 days, I had to exit, and you are not going to get a job in 3 days' time. So buy time. So despite me hating it, I went and applied for the roles. And at the end of the 6th day, I got one of those roles. Again, what do? Again, the same advice: buy time. You take the role and then you go look for a job outside, try to move within, in the organization and all of that. So despite me not wanting to do it, I took that role. But I was so annoyed that I actually requested for a meeting with the managing director. Now, I didn't know him, he didn't know me, but he did give me some time for a conversation. So I was part of technology. He had moved up the ranks from the operations side, so he didn't know much of me. In the conversation, he told me many things and very powerful things, because I told him, I'm really upset with this. I've been with this organization for 14 years and this is what they do to me. He asked me one question. He said, how well do you know the head of technology? I said, well, I know who the head of technology is, but that's about it, right? He said, do you think he wouldn't have known this? He would have definitely known this maybe a month before this really happened to you. And if you had, a good relationship with him in some ways, then maybe he would have told you, not that this is going to happen, but some kind of a clue, and you might have been better prepared. Or you might have done something in the 1 month itself and you wouldn't have been in this situation now. Of course, I did whatever I had to do, but the realization of what he said actually, came home into my head when another friend of mine in the same organization, very senior person, she just moved, from a very nice role that she was in. I suddenly saw her move into another role, and I went and asked her what happened. She said the same head of technology had come to her and said that there's something going to happen in this particular business unit. So she might want to, look for some other opportunities because she may not be able to kind of, work well in this business unit. Post that change. She didn't articulate everything about it, but gave a clue. So she found another, role and moved. And a few months later, actually, there was a management change and, things kind of happened, which she wouldn't have been able to cope with had she been in the business unit. Now, you may ask whether it's the right thing to do, is the ethical thing to do, but we all know that there is information available with people which you are not privy to. And even if there are protocols which kind of forbid you to speak out everything, but there is always, something in the air. And that's the power of information that, we are talking about here, which also comes from the power of relationships that you have. Like all of us know before the budgets are announced that there is probably going to be a hike in this tax. So let's go, maybe electronics are going to be, costlier. Let's go buy a TV and things like that, right? So that's the kind of information that floats around in organizations. And that is available to you only when you develop those relationships with people. And hence, again, it is so very important for you to be having large networks. So let's talk about how do you build these networks. First and foremost, let us understand the definition of networking. The first and foremost definition of networking is, let's first get that right. It is about what you can give to your network. A little different, right? Because we always think networking is about who do I connect so that I can get something from that person. But that's not networking. Networking is about what you can give before you receive. It's like a bank account, right? You have to put in something in it to get the interest. So it is, what is it that you can give to the network? And the very easy way to start this is by introductions. Introductions are very easy to give, right? You know someone and you feel that, these two people probably have some synergies. Let's get them connected. So, I'm part of this network, the Lean In network. I think Shweta and I are also part of the same network. And there was a message which came on the group a few days back from someone saying, do you know, does anyone have any contacts in this XYZ organization? Now, when such things happen, obviously what happens is you're part of a WhatsApp group, you start having conversations on the group, certain messages are lost. I always do a one-on-one. So I immediately messaged this person separately and said, what is the context? Because it's important for you to know what the context is before you say, okay, I know this person or I can do something about it. And this lady told me that a very, good friend of hers, a very senior professional, is looking to apply for a role in that organization. So if there was someone who knows someone, that's how things work, right? So I said, okay, I know someone, let me see what I can do about it. So I messaged that person and he said, yeah, sure, send the CV. And I got the CV of this lady. And finally, the person, my friend, said, it has reached the right person for their consideration. Now, whether this lady would get called for an interview, will get the job is a secondary. At least it has reached the right place that somebody will take a look at the CV, right? Now, what also happened was whenever I do these conversations, as I said, I do try and find out more about the person. So I looked her up on LinkedIn, and she's got whatever role she has, but on LinkedIn, she's also put these things that she's a writer, she's an editor, and all that. And coincidentally, a few days before, on another WhatsApp group, someone had asked whether we know of a woman editor in a particular age group, because there is a book that is written or going to be written and they need some editor. The book is for women in that particular age group, and certain criteria. So they were very specific about who the editor should be. So since I saw on LinkedIn this lady also edits and writes, I asked her, this is a requirement. Would you have someone in your network? And she said, why not me? And I just connected the two of them. Now, can you see how easy it is? And if you look at how much of time I would have spent, probably not more than 5 minutes. Get a CV from here, push it to that organization, and just connect these two people, whoever had the requirement for editing, and things may just work out. All I did was became part of a larger network that is forming now because of these 4 or 5 people. Now, you obviously asking, what is it that you got out of all of this? But eventually things will, happen. Just like, there is some connection somewhere, and there is some way things will come back to you. So don't worry about that. Just get the definition right, which is, what is it that I can give to that person in that network? Because if you know very well who is the person that you go to seek out or to be part of a network, you will always seek out someone who's a subject matter expert. You'll always seek out someone who is probably well connected and can probably influence certain things. Similarly, people will get connected to you only if you are someone special. The value that you bring to them in terms of your expertise, in terms of your influence. So start looking at that and start looking at what the other person needs or how you can help them, and get going in that way. The third important thing is to leave your comfort zone. Most of us, especially in those days when there used to be physical events, and which is where usually networking would happen, including the events that happen in the your own organization. So I don't know how many people you invited for this session today and how many actually turned up, but I used to have this problem when I used to be in Capgemini, and I used to run a technology organization, but I also was passionate about D&I. So I used to run so many D&I initiatives. We had about 500 women, and I used to run so many D&I initiatives and have events. It would be a pain to get them to just climb down 10 floors and come and attend an event, right? So leaving your comfort zone is so important. When you get invited, or look around for events and attend them within the organization and outside the organization too. And what kinds of events? They don't have to be in the same genre, the same interest that you hold. Another story that I wish to kind of relay here. So my husband's cousin, she was, so she passed away a couple of years ago, a brilliant artist, painters, all forms of, art she would, kind of work on, but she never publicized it. So it was very private. And she passed on of cancer 2 years ago. So her daughter, so she's my niece, right? She decided to hold an exhibition in memory of her mother, bring out all those paintings that her mother had done, and she wanted to do something in the space of art to kind of continue that legacy. So she hosted an event in their own, apartment in their clubhouse. I'm talking pre-COVID. So I live in Jayanagar. That apartment is somewhere in the outer ring road, and invited all of us. My husband refused to go. He said, I have nothing, no knowledge of art. It's a Sunday. And who's going to, wade through the same old roads that you otherwise are on, every day of the week? It's okay. Let's give it a pass. But I felt, that I should be there because she's doing it for her mother. And I said, doesn't matter. Even I have no clue about art, but I thought, let me just make my presence felt. Let me go there. And I went there. I stayed there for an hour or so, and I came back home. So since I was there, she introduced me to a few people who were from her own apartment and things like that. While they all had one common trait, which was, they had an artistic touch and flavor to them. They also are professionals, working elsewhere. So I got connected with them. And then we all became part of a WhatsApp group, because whoever was invited there, she put us on a group thinking that we all would like art, and whatever she's doing in terms of creating the legacy for her mother, we would all be part of it. And I've continued to remain in the group. While I cannot contribute anything, neither does whatever come on the group really help me, in any way, but I'm still part of that. But since I told you, I connect with people on LinkedIn also, all these people, professionals who I met at that event, were connected with me on LinkedIn. Just last week, someone, who's actually a CMO of one of the organizations called me, and she said, just like Shweta, invited me here, would you come and, give a talk in our organization on something? So that's what eventually will happen. But you are only going to be looking at how can you give. What could I give to that girl that day? My presence. It really didn't matter. I had to leave my comfort zone. I really felt very alien there, because I could not appreciate, really, other than saying it's beautiful, I couldn't appreciate any other form of art or anything like that. So leave your comfort zone. And finally, speak up. Whether there's an opportunity or no opportunity, you got to make your presence felt. You have to speak up. You have to engage at events like, for example, today. And like yesterday, somebody on LinkedIn wrote to me saying that she had attended another event of mine, which was for women on a career break, and she found it very powerful. And she said she herself is a person who's restarted after career break, and she feels very very she wants to do something about it. That she wants to have her story known by others who are in the restart process, so that they understand what they could do to make it easier for them to restart in their careers. She needn't have told me all this. She could have just said, if she wanted to, hey, I attended your event, it was great. But she had this in her mind. She spoke. She mentioned it in the LinkedIn chat. Now, I being I, when somebody tells me all of this, I will make an attempt, to see that that request is taken care of. Yeah, so I was talking about the importance of speak up. So these are some of the very quick and easy tips for one to start networking. And I'm sure you're not going to get worried about, oh my God, what do I do? Because networking is such a, in many ways, it seems very slimy, it's a very selfish thing. It is not. It is very selfless, because the only thing you need to keep in mind is you have to give to whoever you are meeting as part of that network, and what is it that you can. It's important to also network within your organization, and the first and foremost is start becoming visible. You can't be wearing a cloak of invisibility. And within organizations, I'll say that there is a little bit of selfishness also associated there. While outside the organizations, you can be as selfless and as giving. Within the organization, you can bucket it into three needs that you have. One is you have to get your work done, okay, a very basic thing, and hence you start looking around for people who you will need, so that your work gets done very easily. So some of the people from your support functions, or some of the executive assistants and things like that, right? So you want to have an appointment with someone, as in a doctor's clinic. If you're friends with a receptionist, even if you don't have an appointment, somehow you will get sneaked into, right? So those are very selfish needs, but it is needed. And hence you have to build those relationships. The second is more in terms of a personal need, which could kind of put you in certain, put you across when there are certain opportunities. Like as an example, supposing you have a town hall every month in your organization, and as part of that, you have a 10-minute slot that is given to someone or a couple of people to come and speak about something very interesting that they have done in the last 1 month, or they went through something. Now you have something very interesting to share, and you want that 10-minute slot, and it's kind of running at a premium. There are 10 people always vying for that slot. Now how do you get that slot for yourself? So you might know that the business unit head actually delegates all of this to one confidant, one person, and says, okay, now you figure out the agenda for the town hall, and you figure out who the 2 people should be who are going to share stories this month. So you need to know those people, and you need to build those relationships, so that You can just go by the side and ask, hey, so who's speaking, at the town hall this time? And he'll say, no, I've got 3 people. I have to decide who. And you can sneak in your request and say, oh, really? You already have 3? Actually, I thought, I have a very interesting story, and give him or her a little bit of a preview of that and say, maybe not this time, next time. And for all you know, this person will say, okay, I'll put you, in town hall this month. So that's the second kind of people that you need to be associated with and build relationships with. And the third, obviously, is more in terms of strategic for your growth. And hence, you also need to network outside and bring in the learnings from your external, ecosystem within your organization, as well as look at it very strategically to see, like example, you're all part of the mentorship that you're all going through, and hence you suddenly become part of a larger network with those mentors, with your peer mentees. So how do you use all these new people that you suddenly become part of a network to progress in your own careers professionally and sometimes also personally? And let me end this with a story. Again, going back to my Capgemini days. So Capgemini is a services organization. So we used to work with different kinds of clients. And such a huge organization. Even in Bangalore, you wouldn't know who's there, who's a Capgemini employee, because you're spread across some 10 centers and hundreds of clients. So the Bangalore, there's a center head. He decided to carve out a Bangalore leadership team. And he decided to get one person from every client account to be part of this Bangalore leadership team. So I was part of the European operations then, and my boss nominated me as a representative from the European operations. And I hated it, right? Because I was working within the client office, which was in Bellandur. And the Bangalore Center head used to sit in Whitefield, and the meetings used to happen in Whitefield. And it used to happen once a month for 2 hours. I had to leave the Bellandur office, client office, after taking all the required permissions from the client by 1 o'clock to reach for a 3 o'clock meeting, sit through those 2 hours, which I felt was pretty useless for me because there was not much that I could contribute from a Capgemini operations perspective because I was working within the client office. But anyway, I got nominated, so I attended the first meeting, and to cut a long story short, I really didn't find anything useful in that meeting because it was very, very Capgemini, center specific. I came back and I told my boss, I'm never ever going to attend these meetings. He said, no, but you have to be there. You don't attend, but you are a part of the Bangalore leadership because people have to know that you exist and you are representing the European operations. They have to know about Anirja Ganesh, and they can't take any decisions without it, being known to you and without you putting your comments around it. Anything that has to happen in the Bangalore Center. But then he gave me the permission not to attend these meetings. So for the next 2 or 3 meetings, I didn't go. And then I thought, okay, the 4th meeting, I showed up. But by then they had structured their meetings more beautifully. They had brought in external, speakers. When I say external, not from outside of Capgemini, but interesting things that were happening at Capgemini. So there was this lady who was running the Toastmasters Club. We used to get emails, Capgemini emails, Toastmasters Club is meeting next week. This is the topic, but I never knew what it was. But she came and gave a presentation around what Toastmasters was all about. And now I became more informed, better informed. And once I was out of that client office, I had some time. I actually went and attended one of their meetings. And there was a very senior person who had come. And after the meeting, they kind of, took us for lunch and all of that. So I decided to sit with this senior person, at lunch and started talking. So I had just finished off my engagement from the previous client and I was looking for the next role. So he was asking me what I was doing. And I told him my past experience and that I'm looking around for the next role. And he said, you know what, in our business unit, we are looking for someone exactly like you, someone who has the kind of experience that you bring. This role is still not created. We are still, thinking about it. Why don't you come and meet me tomorrow and let's talk more? And in that 1 hour conversation the next day, he actually asked me, how the role should shape up. And he fast-tracked the process, which would have otherwise taken, say, about 3 to 4 months for the role to be created, a job description, advertised, and hired. He just fast-tracked the whole thing, and I had that role. So that's why it's very, very important to leave that comfort zone, be there, speak up, engage, and it will definitely bring you results eventually. And this is a visual representation of some of the networks that I showed you at the beginning of the session. Now, imagine if all of this were to come together. So, what's the common factor? Nirja is the common factor. At LeanIn, at Jobs for Her, at Aspire for Her, and multitude of other networks that I'm part of. The minute you bring all of them together, you can imagine the power that you have in your hands and the power that you have to influence and impact other things, which, as some of you said, that you've seen the kind of work that I do. It only comes because I'm part of so many networks, and it's not single-handedly that I'm able to accomplish so much. The last thing I will say is, you cannot dig the well when you are thirsty, right? So you cannot start networking when you have a need. So start it today and keep at it. It's only then that it is eventually going to bring you those results, when you are thirsty. So that's all that I had for today. I would really love to remain connected with all of you on LinkedIn. So that's my LinkedIn handle over there.